appears that Joe Biden is having such a difficult time, not just with his approval rating, but the polls as well. He has actually had to bring in Obama and Bill Clinton for his fundraiser in New York City. Now, Stephen Colbert apparently was hosting this fundraiser. Lizzo is there. Like, it's just crazy, over the top, the amount of money that has been spent towards something like this instead of helping the American people. It's just crazy how much money can go into fundraising. And I just think about how that money could be used in different ways, right? But he had to call in Obama and Bill Clinton because word on the street is the Biden administration is actually really concerned about November. Part of that has to do with the recent announcement from RFK. We're going to get to that as well. But he had to call in the big dogs. CNN was actually covering this. They are saying that Barack Obama is crucial to Joe Biden securing a second term. Here we go.
Tomorrow, President Biden, former President Barack Obama, and former President Bill Clinton will all take the stage together to headline a high-dollar fundraiser at Radio City Music Hall in New York.
That's actually today, just FYI.
Sources tell CNN that Obama is planning to ramp up campaigning for Biden as the general election draws closer, and that he's made it clear that the 2024 election marks a, quote, all-hands-on-deck moment. Let's take you now live to the White House with CNN's Kayla Tausche. Kayla, tell us more about Obama's plans to help his former running mate.
Well, Boris, President Obama has been lending his support both in private conversations with his former vice president and former staffers, as well as public fundraising appeals aimed at energizing voters and filling Democrats' coffers. I'm told that the Biden campaign has largely been instructing former President Obama on how exactly he can be most helpful, and I'm told that he's been more than happy to oblige, especially when it comes to bolstering support among demographics like Black and Latino voters, as well as young voters. And while President Obama won't feature prominently on the campaign trail until really later this fall, leading up to the November election.
Pause. So there it is, folks. Joe Biden is relying on Barack Obama to basically funnel in Black voters, Black and Latino voters, because Joe Biden is losing support from the Black community and the Latino community. Meanwhile, Donald Trump is gaining support from the Black community and the Latino community. And of course, Joe Biden is also losing young voters as well because of the war in Gaza.
He has already recorded a series of fundraising videos that are expected to be released in succession in the coming weeks and months. And then there's that big high-dollar fundraiser that you mentioned that's happening tomorrow night in New York City at Radio City Music Hall, where 3 sources tell CNN that the hall there is expected to be well above the initial $10 million estimate set for the fundraising for that event, just underscoring the financial firepower that Democrats have going into November. Now, comedian Stephen Colbert is going to be moderating a conversation on stage with those 3 presidents, what some leading Democrats are calling a once-in-a-lifetime conversation. But I'm told that that conversation is going to be more thematic than substantive. It's going to highlight what President Biden has accomplished in the last 4 years and what they believe the stakes are for the 2024 race. And to that end, Boris, Obama's 2012 campaign manager Jim Messina tells CNN that the fact that Donald Trump is likely to be the opponent for President Biden in the race just underscores the urgency of that mission and his willingness to help this year.
Likely to be the opponent? He is the opponent. What are you talking about? So Stephen Colbert. So let me show you how they already messed up, right? Who made that decision? Who was at the table when that decision was made? If you're bringing Barack Obama in to try to help Joe Biden gain back support with the Black community at this particular fundraising event, then you need to know that Black people not really feeling Stephen Colbert like that. Black people not really feeling, I don't know. I can tell you right now, I don't know many Black folk watching Stephen Colbert. Sorry, it's a reality. It's just the reality. That's who you bring in, Stephen Colbert. Now, he might resonate more with, I would say, maybe some of the older voters, but more so white suburban wine moms, right? And then there's the younger voter issue. A lot of younger voters, and we're talking about the Gen Z generation, they not really rocking with Stephen Colbert either. It's just, who are these people? Who's making these decisions? I don't get it. I don't get it. Be Easy already said, who? Exactly. Most Black people don't know this dude. So it's just, who makes the decisions? Ay, ay, ay.
Kayla Tausche, live for us from the White House. Thanks so much, Kayla. Let's expand this conversation now with Leon Panetta. He's a former White House chief of staff under President Clinton. He also served as defense secretary and CIA director under President Obama. Secretary, thanks so much for being with us. Given the reporting.
Now they bring in a former CIA director and ask for his advice. If you never believed me before about how these government agencies are so involved with decision makings, believe me now.
I'm wondering what role you expect former President Obama to play in the 2024 election.
Well, look, I think it's a good step that the president is having a fundraiser with both former President Clinton and President Obama. They both got reelected as Democrats in the White House. They both were very popular, and they both had a good sense of messaging to the average American. And I think that's where, obviously, President Obama can be very effective. I mean, I think they have to be careful about where they use the former president. I would probably wait until we get closer to the convention and then to the election in the fall. But I think he can be a tremendous asset in terms of reaching not just the average American, but obviously the Latinos, the young people, the minorities that are going to be critical to Joe Biden if he's going to win this election.
Okay, so here's the problem with the Democratic Party, particularly the Biden administration at this point in time. They still think it's 2008. It's 2024. A lot of people that were passionate and excited about Barack Obama back then, not really trying to jive with Barack Obama like that anymore. A lot of us, he doesn't have that same appeal that he used to. I mean, there are a number of events that he actually had during the midterms where he went to speak in front of people, and a lot of people, it wasn't as packed as I think they thought that it was going to be. And there were people that protested against him, people that stood up and spoke out against him at those events. And I don't think Barack Obama was expecting that from the younger people, because he's looking at it as though, listen, I was able to get this demographic. I was able to win over young voters when I ran for president. That was years ago. And I think that the Democratic Party, they have a tendency to be reactive instead of proactive. They never get ahead of the game, right? Like they're always trying to do things at the last minute to fix the mistakes that were done along the way, or to try to correct some of the things with crumbs instead of a full meal, right? They're not proactive. And I don't ever remember them being proactive. If they were proactive, they would have gotten in front of Roe v. Wade, and that would have already been codified into law. And we wouldn't even be in this situation when it comes to the Supreme Court overturning that. So that's the thing. Like they think it's 2008. They're not with the times. They're out of touch. And they're reactive. And
specifically on certain issues, he can be an effective messenger. We know that during his visit at the White House, he participated in an organizing call to celebrate the 14th anniversary of the Affordable Care Act. I'm wondering, how critical do you think messaging on health care generally is going to be in 2024?
Well, I think messaging is going to be very critical to the ability of Joe Biden to be able to win this election in November. And that messaging has to be about health care, about the Affordable Care Act. That messaging has to be about the economy and what needs to be done to make sure we continue to improve the economy.
So here's another problem that they tend to have. They continue to talk about messaging, getting the message right to voters, right? So the problem is not the messaging. The problem is that they're not producing. They don't actually want to fix any of these problems. There are a number of things that Joe Biden could have done by executive order that he decided not to do. He could decriminalize marijuana by executive order. He could do that on his own. He could have canceled all of student loan debt by executive order, right, on his own. So there are a number of things that could have been done. When it comes to healthcare, I think that is the wrong issue for him to run on because he hasn't improved it, right? When you make statements that say, if a Medicare for All bill came across my desk, I would veto it. That doesn't sound like you care about giving everyone healthcare in this country. It sounds like you really don't, which he doesn't. So I don't think that's something you really need to be focusing on. The Affordable Care Act is still a sore spot for some people who actually decided to give that program a chance, and they ended up paying more money than they were before. So I don't really know if that's the message you should be leading people with at this point in time. But notice what he is saying. He's not asking them to produce anything. He's just asking them to message in a certain way.
That messaging has to obviously deal with reproductive rights, which is a critical issue. We just saw in a House race in Alabama that was to be a Republican district, I think. A Democrat won, campaigning on reproductive rights and in vitro fertilization. So there are some very critical issues here that I think could be very helpful to the president with the right message.
So yesterday, President Biden finished up a tour of all 2024 swing states that he started after the State of the Union speech. The campaign is now apparently heeding Obama's warning to step up the number of events that he's holding. Do you think they should be doing even more?
Well, I think it's a critical moment here. Look, I think Trump is in a difficult position. He's going to be going into a trial. He's not able to go out and do a lot of campaign events. This is a moment where Joe Biden can basically dominate in the campaign arena. So
they are completely out of touch. Donald Trump doesn't have to do any campaign events. Donald Trump already proved to you that he didn't even have to get on the debate stage, and he had a number of candidates running against him. What are you talking about? He doesn't have to do that. There is a solid base that Donald Trump has that is going to support him regardless. There's a solid base that I would say the Democratic Party has. I don't think people are really passionate about Joe Biden, but the Democratic Party has that is going to support the Democratic Party regardless. The problem that Joe Biden has run into is that he has lost support among groups that the Democratic Party has, for years, they've been able to hold on to and not have to worry about losing that support. Barack Obama didn't lose support from African Americans when he ran for re-election, definitely not by this extent that Joe Biden has lost support. He didn't lose all the support from the Latino community, and he didn't lose all the support from young voters as well. Joe Biden has. And that is a sign about where the Democratic Party is headed. And if you want to know where the Democratic Party is headed, all you have to do is look at Joe Biden and look at him losing support. That is a number, that's a number of people that the Democratic Party at some point or another is going to have to try to find a way to win back, or they won't. And if they decide not to try to win those voters back, they'll just pivot to another demographic. Right now, I see them pivoting more towards the suburban moms. Joe Biden did this in Georgia. That's how he was able to win Georgia, right? They appeared to the suburban white moms. And I believe that is what they have in their back pocket, because they have a feeling that a lot of people are just fed up because they're not producing results. Now, that event that happened today, they also discussed this as well. Rare joint appearance of Biden and two predecessors underscores extraordinary moment in U.S. history. I just want to reword this. Rare joint appearance of Biden and two other war criminals. Let's call it that, because that's really what it is, folks. Let's get into it.
The Biden campaign is getting a jolt from an old friend who knows a thing or two about getting reelected. Barack Obama spent several hours at the White House last week visiting with his former vice president, and it was more than just a friendly visit. Our senior White House correspondent, MJ Lee, joins me now live from the White House with some new reporting that, MJ, you've done along with our colleague Jeff Zeleny. What are you hearing?
Well, Dana, just going back to that visit that you mentioned by President Obama to the White House last week, I'm told that the mood was cheerful. It was sort of a reunion of sorts for the two presidents' respective staff, too, given that they have known each other, many of them going back to the Obama White House, of course, but it was definitely a working visit. This was the Biden campaign putting the former president to work. The two spent a lot of time together, several hours, I'm told, taping a lot of materials for the Biden campaign that is going to get rolled out in the coming weeks, including, of course, related to the Affordable Care Act. And with the general election now fully underway, we do expect to see the former president increasingly more involved with the Biden campaign and certainly hitting the trail more, especially when we get into the fall. And tomorrow we are about to see this big fundraiser in New York City at Radio City Music Hall, where we will see not just President Biden, not just President Obama, but also former President Bill Clinton as well. The three of them are going to be on stage together, moderated.
Pause here. What you're looking at here, folks, is a picture of three war criminals. That's really what this is, right? They actually thought it was a good idea to bring Bill Clinton back around, considering all the things that have been released recently with Epstein and all that. You think that's the person that you should be hanging around right now? I don't think that's a good idea. I don't think that's a good idea. Again, the Democrat Party strategists thought that this was a good idea.
A conversation with Stephen Colbert. And these are tickets, Dana, that range from $225 to $500,000. There are going to be celebrities in the audience. Some of the
Pause. This is not for working class people. Hell, this ain't even for middle class people. So who are they really trying to appeal to? If the cheapest ticket is over $200 and it goes all the way up to $500,000, they're not trying to appeal to people like me and you. They're trying to appeal to rich, wealthy donors. That's it. She's telling you there's going to be a number of celebrities at this event. Why does this continue to happen? The Democratic Party didn't learn anything from Donald Trump winning in 2016 because they still have not found a way to pivot back to the working class. They really haven't found a way to do that. They have decided at some point or another, and I believe it started with Bill Clinton's presidency, to shift the Democratic Party closer towards the right and closer towards Wall Street and the military industrial complex. That is the crowd that they cater to now. They don't cater to the mom and dad that owns the little shop on the corner. They don't cater to the person that's working at Dunkin' Donuts. They don't cater to the people that's having to work two jobs. They're not talking to those people anymore. They're talking to people that have money. So they don't care about the average everyday Joe Schmo. And what they do is they've gotten celebrities like Fat Joe. He come out of nowhere to promote Joe Biden, to brag about Joe Biden. Lean back, Fat Joe, okay? Lean back. Stick to rap. That's why they're pulling all these celebrities out. I heard Nas was at the State House in New York today. You see what they're trying to do. Now they got time for them, but they don't have time to talk to you. When you try to approach them, when you show up to their events, they kick you out if you ask questions that they don't like. Always remember that.
Audience members will have an opportunity to get photographs taken by Annie Leibovich, the very famous photographer. So it's going to be sort of that kind of high dollar event. And our reporting is that the former president believes that this matchup between President Biden and Donald Trump is going to be extremely close in November. And he's described this as sort of an all hands on deck moment. And I think tomorrow evening, when we see those three presidents together, physically together, banding together to try to stop Donald Trump from returning to the White House, we're really going to see sort of a stunning visual of how much urgency national Democrats are feeling in trying to stop Donald Trump from coming back here to the White House, Dana.
MJ, thank you so much for that great reporting. We're going to pick up on that with the panel. Let's look first, Jeff, I want to come to you on this, about what a big part of the former president, the most recent Democratic former president, Barack Obama, is saying about the health care law that bears his name.
Before the ACA, young adults could be kicked off their parents' health care plan, often right when they were getting ready to head out on their own. All it takes is one diagnosis or one injury, one accident to throw off your plans if you don't have insurance. And thanks to the ACA, young people everywhere have some security. They have some freedom.
But the ACA was crumbs, and Barack Obama knows this. When he was running for office in 2008, remember, he was actually talking about some form of universal health care, but he actually caved to the Republican Party when he was president and gave this watered down version of healthcare. And there were many grumblings from people about the ACA when it was first launched. There were some technical mishaps there, which is to be expected with newer programs. But that being said, people were actually telling me, a friend of mine actually decided to try it out. And people were actually telling me that they were paying more under that than they were under their employer, their private insurance offered through their employer. So the thing is this, Barack Obama gave us watered down healthcare, right? He gave us crumbs when there could have been so much more. Every time I feel like we had this opportunity to get more for the people, and you deserve more, by the way. Don't think you don't, you do. Because this country, they can give money to Israel and everyone in Israel has health care, but you don't have health care. Make that make sense. So you do deserve better, and our government does have the money to pay for it. They just choose to spend it on the defense budget. They choose to spend it in other places. Anything instead of giving it to you. So I don't think this is a good message to send to people, the Affordable Care Act, to reach out to young people, especially a lot of the Gen Z kids. They're not really trying to hear this, man. Barack Obama, they looking at you with a side eye too. These were my students. They looking at you some kind of way too. All right. Because they don't hear you calling for a ceasefire. They don't hear you calling for, the end of the occupation. So you're not as beloved as you used to be, Obama. And I think he's starting to find that out.
Choose how they live their lives.
So Obamacare, obviously a big part of reaching out to the Obama coalition.
Absolutely.
The former Obama coalition, which is a big demographic group, or various demographic groups that Joe Biden absolutely needs to get reelected.
Absolutely needs. And you saw Vice President Harris and President Biden doing that this week as well during their trip to North Carolina, really emphasizing health care as an issue. Vice President Harris has talked a lot about abortion rights as a health care issue. And I think bringing Obama back is a rock star. And the Democratic Party needs some rock stars right now, especially at a time when President Biden's polling is a little bit lower, although he is saying in some of the fundraisers that I've gone to lately that his polling is coming back, and some of it is. But having a jolt like this from someone who is very popular still with his base and with the Democrats, former President Obama, is a big win.
He is.
Who is Obama's base at this point in time? Because it's not the people that it used to be. I would say it's bougie, right? Bougie folk. I would say Black voters that, for the most part, I think that support Obama today are a little bit more on the bougie side, a little bit more connected, right? People who are Democrat loyalists and will vote for the party regardless of who the nominee is. But a lot of us walked away from Barack Obama.
Is still popular, of course, with the Democratic base, and so is the ACA, Obamacare. The latest from KFF asks about the favorability of the Affordable Care Act. 18 to 29-year-olds, young people, 67%. All adults, 59%. I should say, as I bring you in, Mario, it is kind of remarkable that the young people who voted for Barack Obama are now in their 30s. They're kind of out of the demo.
Yeah, but it's a just point. I mean, he still remains the most popular figure in the Democratic Party. Look toward 2022 when they utilized him, or dispatched him rather, as a more or less of a closer, right? He was visiting Pennsylvania. He made several trips to Georgia as well. The fact that they're bringing him in this early in the cycle just shows just that sense of urgency, to use the word that MJ used, that the Biden campaign and Democrats have. We know that Barack Obama has.
Pause for a second. The fact that they're bringing Obama in this early shows you just how poorly Joe Biden is doing. That's what it shows you. He phrased it differently, the sense of urgency. Barack Obama is here so early on during the election year because Joe Biden is performing so poorly. That's why. That is why.
Had some concerns about a lack of urgency that he felt on the part of the Biden campaign. So we're seeing him getting engaged pretty early on in this cycle.
And it looks as though this has gotten under the skin of the Republican candidate, the former president, Donald Trump. I'm just going to read part of something he posted on his social media platform. I'm not running to terminate the ACA as crooked Joe Biden. That's actually what it says. Biden disinformates. You think that's how you would pronounce it? Disinformates or misinformates all the time. The ACA, or Obamacare as it's known, much better, stronger, and far less expensive. In other words, make the ACA much, much better for far less money or cost. I think this was, what time was this? Like 1:30 in the morning?
Yeah, he had many of them.
Yeah, and the Biden campaign had some fun with disinformate and misinformate. But the gist, putting that aside,
right.
The gist of what he is trying to do is say, after all those years of we're going to repeal Obamacare, now he's saying, no, we're just going to make it better. It really is telling.
And I remember, too, a couple months ago, Donald Trump was on this kick about talking about the ACA, something that, to the disdain, I should say, of many of his advisors and people in the Republican Party, they still are, have nightmares, I think, about their failure to deliver on their promise when Donald Trump was in office to repeal and replace Obamacare. And now Donald Trump bringing that message back is something a lot of Republicans do not think is a winning message ahead of November. But all that said, I do think there's one thing I want to point out that.
Pause here for a second. You know what they're not mentioning? They're also not mentioning that Joe Biden also said that he was going to make the Affordable Care Act better. Remember that? That was one of his campaign promises, that he was going to improve that. So again, that's just another example to show you how Trump and Biden are similar in certain ways.
They have in their story that I find is really interesting is that Obama is saying this is going to be a close election. He's trying to raise alarm bells about that. It's something that the Trump campaign and Donald Trump himself also believe. They all recognize that it's going to have to be, as MJ described it, an all hands on deck effort to get their respective candidates elected. And I do think one thing that I've just picked up on, and I cover the Trump campaign, I don't cover the Biden administration or how Obama's efforts, but I'm surprised they haven't brought him in sooner, to be honest, because I feel like he is such a star, as both of you have pointed out. And I take the point that it is very early, but I'm curious to see how involved he actually is, because I know that like even my conversations with Democrats, I pick up that he's not as much front and center as maybe they think he should.
There is time.
Let me pause for a second. You want to hear something funny when they say it's still really early? It reminds me of the Red Sox, because every year, the years where the Red Sox are doing really well, like right out of the gate after opening day, and we're doing really well, people don't say that. But when we have those years, and we're struggling right now, when we have those years where we're not performing well right out of the gate, people are like, it's still early. Which makes sense to say that in April after opening day. But then it gets to be around like August. And people are like, it's still early. And I'm like, it's not early anymore. So I just wonder how long they're going to continue to say that it's still early for trying to help Joe Biden.
I'm guessing that's, and obviously that's the reporting that it is going to change.
Joining us right now, Democratic strategist Joe Trippi and CNN political commentator and Republican strategist Alice Stewart. Good to see both of you. All right, so Joe, are you going to be there at that blinged out affair?
No, I won't be there, but I do think it is all hands on deck. I think this is a tomorrow night will be another fundraiser that again will widen the gap between Biden's money and the Democrats' cash on hand compared to very dismal Republican National Committee dollars and dwindling Trump campaign finances. So I'm glad the Obama is out there. He's right to call this all hands on deck. It is. It's not just for Biden, for democracy itself. It's all hands on deck this November. And I think that'll be part of the rallying call that President Obama, Clinton, and Biden, of course, make.
You can't claim it's about democracy when you're trying to actively prevent third party and independent candidates from being on the ballot. It's such a joke. And notice she described it as a blinged out affair. Again, this is all about an event for people that have money. That's who they're catering to and that's who they're talking to, right? Like, it would be great to actually see them, have the balls to go actually talk to those protesters across the street from the event and hear what they have to say. But they're not going to do that. They're not going to do that because honestly, they don't answer to them anymore. They're not trying to, help the working class. They don't really care what constituents actually want. They just care what the donor class wants. That's why she calls it a blinged out event.
But Joe, how influential would this dinner, this gathering be? I mean, obviously people who had at least $250 or, hundreds of thousands of dollars to get a ticket, they're already on board.
Well, I think Obama, first of all, Democratic grassroots fundraising is on fire, whether it comes from Obama or Biden. And I think the dinner and the event will bring more attention at every level. And I think right now, Democratic activists and donors, and I'm talking about $10 to hundreds of thousands, are realizing there's an advantage here. It's time to pile on. It's time to widen that gap. And so I think you're seeing, at least in the fundraising that my firm does a lot of fundraising for progressive and other groups. And we're seeing a big uptick, particularly in the defense of democracy. So I think this event tomorrow will just fuel that.
Okay, so you see how the progressives and the word progressive has basically been co-opted by the Democratic Party, because he's telling you here that he does a lot of fundraising for progressive groups. Anybody can call themselves a progressive now and not actually agree with progressive policies.
All right, so Alice, this kind of gearing up for Biden's re-election, I mean, certainly this is signaling a shift that perhaps maybe the Trump campaign needs to be rethinking its opponent.
Not at all, Fred. Look, I think when Obama says they're all hands on deck, it's more of a freak out amongst Democrats. Look, they're going to need every penny of this money they're raising. And look, that event sounds pretty cool. I wouldn't mind attending and getting my picture taken by Annie Leibovitz. But they're going to need all that money. This campaign and this administration is in overdrive trying to convince Americans that the economy is good, the border is secure, and our nation is safe. And none of that is true. They're even spending millions of dollars, Fred, on trying to shore up Hispanics and African American voters, really part of the heart and soul of the Democratic Party. And they're spending money to keep those people on board because they're losing those to the Trump administration. So there's no amount of money that's going to make people feel as though their economic situation is better. They don't feel that way. And the polling indicates this. And you look at every battleground state poll, the Real Clear Politics average shows Donald Trump ahead of Joe Biden in those polls. And that's a major factor for this Biden administration. They got to raise a lot of money to turn things around. And there's no amount of star power that's going to make Joe Biden any younger, make people feel like the economy is good when it's not.
Well, I guess she told them. Janine says she said what she said. Yeah. Maybe they should have started with her and not ended with her. But let me show you this event, because this is the flyer for the event. And I shared this on Twitter and I said, war criminals event tonight in NYC. I hope there are protests. And there were. So you can see it here, March 28th, one night only, an evening with President Joe Biden and Presidents Barack Obama and Bill Clinton in conversation with Stephen Gobert. And listen to this. Here are the special guests. Cynthia Erivo, Queen Latifah had the nerve. They actually got Queen Latifah to come to this. Like, seriously. Lizzo, Leah Michelle, and Ben Platt, hosted by Mindy Kaling. Now, Lizzo, of all people, I'm surprised she, not Miss, I just took a DNA test and found out I'm 100% that, what? Lizzo, who actually just had complaints filed against her from her workers.